Hello everyone, welcome back to school. I hope you had a successful teaching practicum, that you enjoyed your experience and learned something new during that time. Today is going to be lecture 9, going way back in time, back to your midterm. I'm just going to give you some general feedback about that, and we can use that as a little bit of review as we get kick-started back into this interview practice time. I've read through your midterm reflections. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about the midterm interviews. It's very good for me to read that. It gives me some good ideas about how I can improve this course and how I can help you best. I noticed many of you, thought through some of the difficulties that you're facing in this course, and have made some plans to help yourself to improve, and that's wonderful to see. And many of you commented that you'd like to see more, sample answer to questions, to how to successfully answer questions. So I'll give you some sample answers to some of the midterm interview questions that we did, just to help you with that. Give you maybe some expressions or some new ideas for how to approach answering interview questions. So, without further ado, let's get started. So first of all, I think maybe you forget the midterm already. So the midterm layout, you were given 4 questions in advance to prepare, and you answered 2 questions during that interview. If you forget what the questions were, they were, tell about a bad habit you want to change and why, how to form good relationships with students, why do you want to be a teacher, and should exams be used to assess students. So obviously the layout was different from the actual 임용고시 2차 test, but it gives you, I wanted to give you a feel for the interview process, how it feels to be in an interview room, and give you lots of time to prepare to answer the questions, just to apply your foundational skills, what we learned early on in the course. And now we're going to shift to more like a real interview situation for the remainder of this course, to give you more practice in that area, coming up with your ideas faster. Okay, so how did the midterm interview go? So reading through your reflections, a lot of you were very satisfied with it, and some of you were dissatisfied with it. But even if you were satisfied, you realized that there are areas that you want to improve in. And even with plenty of preparation, we learned that sometimes things just go wrong in an interview. You're nervous, it's hard to get all your thoughts processing in an interview when you're in that kind of pressure. But it's good to experience that sort of pressure, just to work through your mind and get those feelings, kind of realize how you can push back those feelings so that you can be successful in an interview. So I'm going to go through some of the strengths that I noticed in the midterm interview. So for a lot of you, and this doesn't apply to everyone, just general strengths, there was lots of good energy during your interview, and I did see a lot of confidence. It's great to see smiling faces. When you see a smiling face as an interviewer, it just projects confidence. It fills the room with joy, and as soon as I see a smiling face, I know it's going to be a good interview. So positivity goes a long way, even despite your nervousness. Try to show positivity in your interviews. I heard lots of really, really great ideas to answer the questions. Lots of well-organized responses, great use of English expressions, and strong vocabulary to articulate your ideas. In your reflections, some of you said, you need to learn more expressions, learn more vocabulary. And I wish I could just, feed you all these expressions and vocabulary, but, there's so many different kinds of questions that we really need to kind of figure out, what works best for different situations. And that just comes with practice. And we'll keep working on that as we go on. In your answers, I saw some really good knowledge of educational theory, good use of terminology, and I was happy to see that you're building that vocabulary over time. So keep that up. And I was really happy to hear some really great examples from your teaching experience in the past. This goes a long way to show your passion for teaching, shows your qualities and your skills as a teacher, and it also helps to illustrate your points to make them clear. So that was well done. I'm going to go through some areas of growth, and for that I'm going to go through each of the criteria that I graded you on, just to talk about some of the weaknesses that I noticed in some answers and how we can improve upon that. Now, one important lesson I think many of us learn is that memorization is not always a great tool to answer questions. When we try to memorize answers, sometimes it's very easy to forget what we want to say, and that leads to bigger problems than if you were just able to speak through your answers more naturally. So as we move forward in this course, because we're going to have limited preparation time, there's not going to be that opportunity for memorization, because in a real interview, you won't have that ability to memorize answers anyways. And for that, we need to practice being able to think through our ideas as we're speaking. Okay, so let's go through each of the criteria. So accuracy. So remember, accuracy is directly answering the question that you are given. And I mentioned before, pay attention to keywords in the sentence, or in the question, sorry. One of the biggest problems was for the question, tell about a habit you want to change and why. So for some of us answering that questions, you talked about 2 or 3 habits that you want to change, but a habit in the question means one habit. So to answer the question accurately, we should only be talking about one habit that we want to change. Remember, your job in an interview is you want to make yourself look good. You want to show your best qualities. If you talk about 2 or 3 habits that we want to change when the question only asks you for one, you're just showing more of your weaknesses. So we don't want to do that, obviously. We want to be able to show our strengths. So that was one of the biggest issues I saw. Next, opinion questions. The one like, do you think exams should be used to assess students? For opinion questions, take one position. You're for exams or against exams, and make it clear which position you are taking. Even if you feel kind of both ways, since it's an opinion question, just choose one position to defend, okay? And make sure that your opinion is clear in your answer near the beginning. Now, if you're for exams, make sure you discuss the benefits of exams. Don't talk about the disadvantages, because we want to say why we are for exams, not why we're against them. Okay, so if you're for exams, benefits. If you're against exams, then you can show the disadvantages without discussing the benefits. All right, so stay focused on your point of view. As many of you did, when you're showing problems with exams, I was happy to hear that you discussed alternative assessment methods. That was well done. But when you are discussing the problems, just to show your skills, it's also good to talk about better ways to assess students rather than exams. Okay, so I think that's an important part of that question, if you're against exams. Also, make sure you stay on topic. And sometimes I heard like too much irrelevant detail, maybe some overly specific examples that distracted from the main point. So an example would be for the question like, why do you want to be a teacher? Or how will you form good relationships? Sometimes I heard like really long descriptions of past teachers and how a past teacher was so great at inspiring you, or so great at forming relationships. It's okay to use that as an example, but try to keep it brief. Don't make that the main part of your answer, because the question asks, why do you want to be a teacher? Or how will you form relationships? So by focusing on past teachers that we had, we're kind of distracting from the main point of yourself, right? So we want to focus on why you want to be a teacher, why and how you will form good relationships. That's the key to answering those questions. So be careful about those key words. How will you do this? All right. Next, about structure. First of all, make sure you get to the point. Don't start with, I will tell you about, okay? Get to your main idea. Start with a good, strong opening sentence to introduce your ideas, and then get to your point. That's really important because, like I said, your opening statement is going to be the first words that your interviewer hears. When it's strong, you get their attention and you make them want to listen more. So that strong opening sentence is really, really important. All right? If you're answering a question like, how will you keep good relationships with students? Don't start, first I will do this. Start with why are relationships so important in a classroom. Introduce your idea and then start discussing your ways. I'll go through a sample answer for that one. All right, sometimes your answers are a little bit confusing to follow. When you're giving preparation time, make a plan, make an outline of what you want to say and how you're going to present your ideas so that you can follow your ideas through a straight line. By making a plan, either on paper or in your head, right, you're not going to be, you're not going to lose track of what you're saying and get confused in your own answers. When you have a plan, right, you'll be able to speak through your ideas much more simply. Maybe not simply, but it'll be much easier to keep your ideas organized and go through them without having to stop and think too much. And it'll also keep us from going off on tangents, talking about irrelevant ideas, right? Plans are key to help your ideas to stay focused. And also to stop repeating the same points again and again. Once you've made a point, move on, explain it, and then move on to the next point. Don't keep turning back and saying the same sentence again and again. We don't want to repeat your points. Once you've said it once, that's enough. And here's the way we want to go. Give your opinion, give a reason or a point why you have that opinion, explain your reasoning, and maybe give an example to help to illustrate your point. But don't give an example until you've explained it more generally. Specific examples won't really help to support your reason unless you've explained it first. All right. Your ideas might seem disconnected. So make sure we use those discourse markers or signposting to show where you are in your answer. First, second, third, just to keep all of your ideas connected and so that one idea can lead into the next, to keep a logical flow of your information. And think about this, if you're confused by your own answer, then your interviewer is also going to be confused listening to your answer. So once again, making a plan and moving in a straight line is going to keep you more focused, make you less confused, and your listener less confused. Next, about detail. So for some answers, I just heard some really missing key information that would really help to clarify your points. Make sure that you're explaining your ideas in enough detail so that the listener can reasonably understand exactly what you are saying. Focus on the WH question words. What happened? Or why is this important? How will you do this? Who needs to do this? If you're giving examples, when did this happen? Where did it happen? Who was involved? All right? Think about giving all those questions, or answering all those questions in your answer. Maybe not all of them, but the most relevant ones to whatever it is you're saying. Sometimes we explain without making the point clear. So first of all, start by showing the importance of what you're saying. Why are forming good relationships important? Because that's going to tell me why you're taking the actions you did, what your points are, why those points are important. Sometimes I heard a lack of focus on results of the actions that you're taking. So if you're talking about forming good relationships, talk about why are you taking these actions? So some of you said, oh, I want to learn about students' interests. That's a great point. Why is that important? And what will the desired effect be? What will the results of that action be? Another example is talking about alternative assessment methods. So some of you talked about better than exams would be portfolios. The end. Well, why are portfolios a better assessment method than exams? Make that point clear. It's a great idea. Expand on that. Don't make a great point and then not explain why that's a better alternative. Okay? Explain your details thoroughly. Next, another great idea. So when you're asked questions about weaknesses or on the midterm exam, a bad habit or a habit you want to change, don't talk about a negative without showing a positive side. So in your answer, just to add more detail, you talked about your bad habit, why you want to change it. To show your strength, show your understanding of the need to change it, and maybe a plan for the future of how you will intend to work on changing this habit. By showing this plan to change this habit, you're demonstrating a strength that you possess. All right? Balance a negative with a positive, especially for questions about weaknesses. Use recent experience as examples to show strengths. When we're talking about forming relationships with students, use your teaching practice or teaching experience. Talking about your past teacher and how they formed relationships, it's kind of outdated, right? Use more recent examples, especially from your own experience, because that's going to be a stronger example than talking about a past teacher, okay? And next, be specific. Try to avoid using vague language, especially the words things or something. I will do many things to help my students. Use the exact terminology that you want to express your ideas. So instead of there are many things that I can use to assess students, maybe there are many assessment methods that I can use to evaluate my students, right? It's much more specific and shows what I mean to say. Education. Even if a question is not directly connected to education, make a connection. Remember, this is a teacher's interview. Try to connect it. So again, that habit question is not related to education, but you can show a relationship because you can show how a bad habit that you have is related to, and changing that habit, how it's related to becoming a better teacher, all right? How will improving upon this habit lead to you being a better educator for your students? It's a great idea and will just really strengthen your answer to interview questions if you relate it to teaching. Delivery. Okay, first, show enthusiasm when you're speaking. Even if you're not a great English speaker and you have difficulty coming up with the words, if you're enthusiastic, you're smiling, you have passion for what you're saying, that's going to make your answer much better. And it will actually, help you to overcome some of those difficulties you have in speaking English, right? It's really important. Confidence, confidence, confidence. Like I said before, even if you're nervous, try to control your nervous reactions to, deliver your answer the best you can. This could mean, using your hands. Keep your hands away from your face and your hair. Keep them in front of you if you don't use your hands to articulate your points, all right? Sometimes, playing with pencils or papers, that just shows your nervousness. Keep your hands still in front of you if it's going to be a problem. Ums and ahs. Okay, this is kind of mixed because maybe you have a habit, like I do, of using ums and ahs when thinking of your points. A little bit of ums and ahs is natural. It's okay. Too much, however, like multiple times within a sentence, is not going to help with your delivery. So if you have a bad habit of saying or right, try to reduce that habit. There, I just said Next, if you make a mistake, don't show your frustration, right? You're nervous, don't laugh at yourself while you're speaking. Don't get angry. oh, don't show that frustration if you make a mistake. If you make a mistake, it's okay. We all make mistakes. Just stop, slow down, think about what you want to say, and then continue. Keep eye contact. Looking somebody in the eye when you're speaking to them, again, that shows your confidence. If you are looking at the sky when you're speaking, or looking at the floor as you're thinking through your ideas, right? That distracts the listener. It doesn't show your confidence, okay? So try to break that habit and make good eye contact. And make practicing pronunciation and fluency something that you work on and practice regularly, if that's an issue that you're having. This could mean getting rid of extra syllables. So, students, not students, right? Just those little small improvements in pronunciation can really help to strengthen your answer. And then fluency. Let your words flow together. And I'm going to give you a little tip. Let's say I want to say this sentence. Students are the future. Hope you can see that. Here's a little tip. When you have a word that ends with a consonant, S, and the next one begins with a vowel, move the consonant to the next words. So instead of students are the future, it's too broken up. Make it students are, move that S to the R, students are the future. So that's a good little trick to help with letting your words kind of flow together and improving fluency. That's just one of many tips that could help you. Next, mechanics. So using grammar and vocabulary effectively. First, biggest problem I heard is probably verb tenses. When you're talking about the past, use the past tense. Talking about the present, use the present tense. Present simple, present continuous. Make sure that when you're using the present continuous, like I am doing this, like B-I-N-G. There's a little trick to remember. Remember, B-I-N-G. I am doing, all right? If you're talking about the future, use the future. And pay attention to those things. Simple, continuous, and perfect, or all the tenses. Subject-verb agreement. Remember your verb endings. I teach, not I teaches. He teaches, not he teach. So just those little subject-verb agreements are really important. And if that's an issue that you have, work on it. Nouns. First of all, using articles, a, an, and the. Articles can be very difficult in English. I know. But you should make them part of your regular speaking practice, okay? If that's an issue you have. I heard issues with using plurals. So saying child when you meant children, or childs, and when you should be saying children. Next, countable versus uncountable nouns was a big one. So advice, information, feedback, these are uncountable nouns. Don't put them into plural. So not advices, not informations, not giving some feedbacks, right? These are uncountable nouns, so be careful about those. And then using transitions, not traditions, transitions. I talked about the danger words, so, but, because, and I heard them a lot in our interviews. Try to use more variety of transitions. For example, to illustrate this point, rather than, so, as a result. It's much more effective for putting your ideas together. Next, some areas for growth, time management. Remember, your interview should be about 5 minutes long. If you're too short, if you're speaking for too short a time, it's mainly because you're lacking specific details, you're not explaining your points sufficiently, or maybe you're speaking too fast. You can slow down a little bit. Next, if your answer is too long, main reasons could be maybe you're giving too much irrelevant detail, you're getting off topic, you're breaking or pausing too much to think through your ideas, or maybe you're speaking too slowly and you need to pick up the pace of your speaking. All right, so these are some areas to work on just to manage your time a little bit more. More practice will help you to manage your time. And in the Imyogoshi test, you will not be able to see the clock. You have to be able to manage your time effectively during your interview. Okay, so that's something to practice. All right, so getting on to some sample answers. Sorry about that. Thought something went wrong with my phone. So moving on to some sample answers. So I'm going to go through 2 of the questions from the midterm interview, just to show what I may have said for this answer. So first one, I think the one that gave some of us the most difficulty is tell about a habit you want to change and why. So here's an answer that I wrote out for you. I'm just going to read through it. You can go through it on your own. I'm going to stop and talk about, why I chose this way to answer the question. Okay, so first of all, so tell about a habit you want to change. So teacher is a role model for students. When a teacher expresses bad habits, both inside and outside the classroom, it sets a bad example for students. It is therefore crucial for teachers to recognize their bad habits and determine ways to correct these habits for themselves and for their students. So here's my opening statement, right? It introduces my main idea, and right off the bat, I'm making a connection to teaching to show why this question is relevant to education. Okay, now I'm going to introduce my bad habit. So for me personally, a habit that I want to change is my disorganization. I'm the type of person who keeps everything out of fear of throwing anything away in case of throwing away something that is important. However, this leads to keeping clutter that creates a mess in my personal space and makes it difficult to find important items. Especially my desk is full of piles of papers that are often no longer necessary, which often bury my class materials and my lesson plans that I've written down. And while this habit ensures that I keep important materials, they are often difficult to find, which waste my time and energy that could be spent on more useful tasks such as preparing for class. All right, so I've introduced my bad habit. Now I'm going to go into explain a little bit more about why I want to fix this bad habit. As teachers, we expect our students to be organized and keep their personal belongings in a safe place. And teachers need to demonstrate this ability as well. To fix this habit, I plan to keep separate files for my class materials that are organized by subject and categories. For instance, I'll put all of my lesson plans for my senior classes into one file accompanied by all of the materials that will be used for that lesson. At the same time, I'll keep students' marked assignments in a separate file that can be easily referenced when needed. So notice I've introduced my bad habit and why I want to change it, why it's important, but now I'm showing a strength by showing my plan to fix this habit and why fixing this habit will make me more effective. Sorry, I lost my space. By doing this, I will have a tidier desk and keep all of my important documents in a safe place that is easily accessible. Furthermore, I currently use a lot of post-it notes on my computer and wall space to notify me about upcoming dates and assignments. In the future, I intend to use a daily planner to keep all of my appointments and ideas in one place. By keeping a daily planner, I'll be better organized to ensure that I don't forget appointments and that I complete all of my work on time. Okay, now I'm going to move on to my closing statement to conclude. So by working on these organizational skills, I will not only improve my ability to be productive, but I will also be able to model appropriate ways for my students to keep their study materials and personal belongings safe. They say old habits die hard, but by acknowledging my bad habit and taking the first steps toward improvement, I can overcome my disorganization and develop myself as a whole. All right, so notice how I answered the question by talking about my weakness. I demonstrated a strength, right? And I ended with a strong closing statement to show the results of my efforts. And I've tied my answer to teaching. All right, let's look at another question. So how will you keep a good relationship with your students? All right, now, way back in, I forgot which lecture it was, maybe lecture 3? lecture 4, I talked about the STAR method. Since this is a situational question, we can recognize that, like, how will you keep a good relationships with students? How will you do this? It's a situation question asking what I will do to solve this problem in the future. I'm going to use the STAR method. If you forget what the STAR method is, I'm going to introduce a situation. I'll talk about my task as a teacher, the actions I will take, and then the results of my actions. So let's start by talking about the situation. S. Forming good relationships with students is an essential part of a teacher's responsibilities. By forming strong bonds with students, teachers can build trust and a positive learning environment that students require to achieve success in their studies and bring enjoyment to the act of learning. So right off the bat, I've showed the importance of what I'm saying. I've introduced the main situation, the problem. Next, task. As teachers often deal with large classes, it can be difficult for teachers to build close relationships with individual students. Furthermore, as teachers are often seen as authority figures, it can be challenging for teachers to earn the trust of their students. As a result, a teacher needs to take proper steps to ensure that strong student relationships are built by teaching passionately in ways that engage students in learning and appealing to their students' interests. Now I've discussed the task, what I need to do as a teacher in order to build these strong relationships, and the challenges that are presented to me. Now I'm going to get into the actions, which is the main points. All right. First of all, learning should be enjoyable and exciting for all students. And when it isn't, students will blame and disconnect from the teacher. Therefore, I will teach with enthusiasm and passion using a range of lesson ideas that will allow students to take ownership of their learning. By using hands-on activities to engage learners, not only will students be enthusiastic about the activities, but I can also share my passion for learning as an active participant in the class. If I am passionate about the content I teach and the methods I use, the students will also be filled with this passion, which will create stronger relationships through this shared passion for learning. During my teaching practice last year, this isn't really my example, but during my teaching practice last year, I realized that by developing activities that allowed students to apply their learning and be creative, the students began interacting with me more, often by asking questions they were curious about, and also by sharing their ideas, creations, and findings with me. I learned that students are more excited about communicating with me when we share enthusiasm and are engaged together in the learning process. Furthermore, I plan to appeal to students' individual interests through my teaching. Every student has a passion for something, and as a teacher, I should use these interests and passions to my advantage by incorporating them into my lessons. Student surveys are a fantastic way to measure these interests, as well as taking the time each day to talk one-on-one with students to get to know them better. Once I know what my class is interested in, I have to find creative ways to integrate it into my lessons in a way that respects these individual differences. Okay, so those are my actions that I would take to build these relationships. Now, moving on to the R. So by using these actions, what will I achieve? Teachers who take the time to keep good relationships with their students by being passionate, engaging, and understanding will see increased participation, higher involvement, and overall increase in learning. I believe that students will appreciate the extra effort I have made to include their particular interests in the learning process, realize that they are respected, and gain trust in me as a teacher. By being passionate about what and how I teach and relating to my students' personalities and interests, there is no doubt that we can build stronger relationships together. By cultivating these strong bonds with my students, the learning possibilities will be endless, as they will trust me as an equal in a classroom that promotes learning, stimulates positive social interactions, and builds mutual respect between my students and me. All right, so there's the sample answer. Obviously saying that all of this in an interview would be difficult, but practice makes perfect. I had the advantage of writing this down so that you could be able to follow along rather than just speaking it. But like I said, if you organize and plan your ideas effectively during your preparation time, you can do it. Okay, it just takes practice and it takes time, but you will get there. All right, so I hope some of those sample answers help to give you some ideas for how to structure your ideas maybe some expressions that you can use to connect ideas, and maybe some really good words that maybe you didn't know before that will help to build your vocabulary, such as like cultivating these strong bonds. Using strong vocabulary, that's different. It will make you stand out in an interview. All right, so moving forward, lectures 10, 11, and 12 are going to be conducted on Zoom. So I'm going to check the announcement on LMS for details and info about those Zoom classes. Before those Zoom classes, I'm going to provide some materials that you should bring for class, including the PPT and also some interview questions that we're going to use during those Zoom meetings. So please download these materials before lecture time so you can use them during the lecture. Please be on time and be prepared with paper and pen. Thank you. And one small assignment for this week. All right. And this is going to be developing interview questions. If you haven't already, I want you to go to that document I put out near the beginning of the term with all of these past exam questions. Just to understand what types of questions could potentially be asked on the exam. You can do some more recent checks. Some of those questions are outdated from a few years ago. Look up, do a web search to see some more recent questions that were asked in different provinces. Okay, just to understand the types of questions you asked. Now, obviously, in this year's Imyongoshi, it's doubtful that they will use same questions that have been used in the past. And we don't know what questions they will ask in the future. I don't know, nobody knows. So what I want you to do is to think about these past exam questions and try to think of some new questions that might be asked on future exams. And I want you to make 2 of your own original interview questions, ones that you didn't see on any past exams. So come up with 2 of your own. I want one question to be education related and one to be non-educational related. Okay? And I want you to post your questions in the eClass, the LMS discussion board for week 9. And that's the assignment for this week, coming up with 2 original questions and posting them there. And I'm going to use some of these questions to practice for the remainder of this course. Maybe not all of them, but some of them I will definitely use. So your questions will be due on Sunday, May 9th. And why not, after you make your questions, why not practice answering them? So like we've done before, you can record your answers response. You do not have to post your recordings in LMS. This is just for your own personal practice. It's been a while since we've practiced, so just to get back into that practice routine might be helpful. Okay, so that's all for this week, and I will see you on Zoom for week 10 this week when you're watching this video. I hope you watched this video before week 10. All right, that's all. Take care. Have a good day. Bye.